left the Yale campus on a summer day in 1772 en route to New Haven Harbor. To passers-by, the students blended into the milieu of the city as if they had lived in New Haven all their lives. But neither scholar had grown up in town. One of the boys, Nathan Hale, the son of an affluent deacon and farmer, lived 60 miles north in the hills of Connecticut. Having spent the past 3 years studying at Yale, Nathan held an idealistic view of the city. Its tradition of political discourse and fidelity to Christianity fell right into what he, indeed nearly all colonists, had been raised to believe, that in God all things were possible. Still, beyond a visit to the house of the school's resident physician, Dr. Aeneas Munson, the local tavern, or a shopkeeper nearby, Nathan rarely ventured beyond the surrounding neighborhood, keeping the majority of his socializing confined to campus. Nathan and his classmate, Isaac Gridley, were headed to New Haven Harbor, a bustling seaport situated along the jagged coastline between Stamford and Saybrook. There, merchants sold colonial goods, mainly sugar, pewter, nails, timber, fishing gear, compasses, sextants, and coopers and ship hands loitered about the docks in search of work, while businessmen kept tabs on their coastal offices and warehouses. The first Puritans to settle in New Haven 150 years earlier felt there was great value in such a sprawling seaside community, and hoped to monopolize what they viewed as a prominent commercial port on the East Coast. The problem became, however, that New York was but a half-day's sail south, Boston a day's sail north. Both were larger cities with much more to offer seafaring merchants and importers. Yet even though their immediate plan for financial success failed, the harbor prospered and sustained a growing economy over the years, providing a viable tract of land and a tenable backdrop for the neatly painted frame houses of many of the town's influential families dotted about the ribboned countryside overlooking the harbor. It had turned cloudy by the time 17-year-old Nathan and his 15-year-old classmate reached the shoreline. Undeterred by the gray skies above, they pushed a sloop out into the water, and with their backs to the wind, jumped aboard for what they assumed was going to be an afternoon of leisurely sailing. But soon after their voyage began, the weather turned volatile and violent. Waves crashed up over the bow of the small sloop as Gridley, certainly worried they wouldn't make it back to shore without being swallowed up by the choppy waters, looked to Nathan for guidance and comfort. With the confidence he had acquired while becoming one of Yale's top 13 scholars, Nathan said, "I will never be drowned." To Gridley, Nathan appeared too sure of himself, as if he knew, and firmly believed, that dying in the midst of a storm at sea was not in God's plan for him. Nathan's words did little to suppress Gridley's trepidation. It thundered, and lightning cracked in flashing bolts around them. Maneuvering the vessel back to shore, Nathan explained why he was so certain they would make it in safely. He pointed to a blemish on his neck, beckoning Gridley to have a closer look. A childhood friend of Nathan's, Asher Wright, who would become his close ally and camp attendant during the Revolutionary War, later described Nathan's pockmark as a large hair mole on his neck. A mole on one's neck was a sign of bad luck. If one had a hair growing from that mole, it further indicated that death by hanging was in your future. Reflecting back on his life with Nathan, Wright added, "In his boyhood, his playmates sometimes twitted him about the mole, telling him he would be hanged." Apparently, Nathan Hale believed it to some extent, because as he and Gridley, surely drenched from the heavy rains, pulled the boat ashore, Nathan spoke of it again. He pointed to the slightly elevated mole on his neck, and again said he knew he wasn't going to drown. Gridley wanted to know how his friend could be so certain. "I am to be hung," Nathan lamented. Chapter 1. The Righteous and Patriotic Man. The fiery colors of leaves burst around New England during the fall of 1769. 15-year-old Enoch and 14-year-old Nathan straddled their horses and began what was a 60-mile journey to New Haven. They had been lectured by their father, Richard Hale, regarding the vices of living in a city far from his supervision. Richard probably told the boys to mind their studies and seek guidance in the Word of God while away from home. For Nathan and Enoch, it was the first time they had left home alone, beyond a brief visit to their Uncle Strong's in Salmon Brook, or a trip into Hartford, Norwich, or Wyndham for supplies with their father. Richard Hale had